Hi there, I'm Nancy Nash with Starfish Strength. As you may know, I'm a personal trainer and a behavior change specialist. I talk to clients about all aspects of wellness, trying to help them live their best lives. The thing that I really want to talk about today is my reproductive journey. I've had a number of women talk to me about their reproductive health, and I've noticed that a lot of women feel like what they're experiencing is weird or invalid in some way. And the biggest reason I wanted to share this so publicly is that I know that I'm not alone, and I want to make sure that you know whatever you're going through in your reproductive health, you're not alone. And if you're curious about infertility and the current options available, this video might be helpful to you in that regard as well. So today I'm gonna start injections. This is the Menopur I was given. I have to say, being handed this at the pharmacy was a little bit overwhelming, even though, I went through the class and I learned how to do this, and I know they come in these boxes. I did kind of feel like I was smuggling drugs out of there. They gave me a to-go grocery bag with my needles, my sharps, and everything. Here's what I understand about the process I'll be going through so far. I went for a pelvic ultrasound today. I had a pregnancy test and hormone baseline testing today. So I'll do injections every night, somewhere between 6 and 8 for the next 6 days. And then I'll go back and have another pelvic ultrasound. They'll test my hormones and they'll make possible adjustments to the medication. So I was told that the minimum they would put you on is half a vial and the maximum they put you on is 8 vials. So I am on 4. So here I am. I'm going to try hormone injections, and I'm kind of terrified, also fascinated. So I went for an ultrasound today, and I was told that my left ovary looks pretty active and pretty awake. And my right ovary is apparently small and sad and not active, not participating. So I am really scientifically interested to see what happens. I am excited that I could get pregnant. To be quite honest, I don't really believe that that's something that my body wants. I think I'm kind of fighting against the tide. I do have a lot of curiosity, but I know I'm trying to be optimistic right now because I'm also terrified. I'm, kind of a little queasy about giving myself a shot or asking my husband to do that. More than that, I'm honestly really worried about not feeling like I can regulate my emotions. I'm also scared to let myself make this my life, because I've said for a long time that I would not do that. I didn't expect to feel so emotional about the adoption and losing that. I don't want to be a hypocrite, because I do believe that there are so many amazing children out there that really do need love. And I'm not writing that off. There's a financial incentive right now because I've met my deductible this year. So this is way more affordable than it ever has been for me in my entire life. I do think that if I look back 5 years from now, I will be glad that I tried it. I think that the person that I'm going to make this video for will understand that there's part of you that even if you live an amazing life, you just feel like there's something wrong with you, that you're supposed to be able to make babies, like biologically, and it makes you feel less than. It just does. I personally love seeing pictures of other people's babies. I don't feel animosity or jealousy. I love celebrating with other people. I'm afraid of focusing on this and kind of making this my journey for the next couple months, really letting myself want this and just being dragged down into the depths of depression because my body says no. One of the side effects from taking these injections is apparently gaining 5 pounds a month. I was like, you're just saying like some people gain weight, right? Like that has a lot to do with your lifestyle. And they're like, no, you're definitely going to. As someone that has worked really hard to lose and maintain weight, if the end result is to then get pregnant, that sounds worth it to me. But if the end result is to feel crazy hopped up on hormones and not be able to get pregnant and have to lose however many pounds, that sounds pretty freaking horrible to me. That's the other thing that I'm going to be tracking. They want me to track my weight and my waist circumference. I'm going to try to be as healthy as I can about this. There's this part of me that's like, I'm not going to gain that weight. I'm going to fight it, but I don't know if that's truly up to me. I'm going to be on a weight loss journey after this, possibly one step at a time. I just wanted to list that as one of the other fears I was having. This is going to be a continual journey. Thank you for going on it with me. Max is helping out today. We're having a little separation anxiety. So this will be the third day that I'm taking the Menopur injections, basing it around the belly button. You alternate between the left and right side. So you start on the outside. So I started on my left, 3 inches away from the belly button. And then the second day I did the same orientation on my right side. So now I'll go back to the left for my third injection, 2 inches away from the belly button. I don't know why my brain thought that I was going to be shooting myself in the butt. Like, this makes so much more sense that it would be proximal to the ovaries. But I've learned a lot of other things that I didn't know too. My ovaries are different sizes. So apparently my right ovary is pretty small in comparison to the left. Yesterday, I got to look at the x-ray that my reproductive endocrinologist took of the fallopian tubes, and I didn't know that they could look like tangled fishing line, and I didn't know how small they were. Maybe this sounds stupid, but as someone that has studied human anatomy, I see pictures of certain things over and over again, and I guess I just kind of like always assumed that the fallopian tubes were just as big proportionately to the uterus as they are illustrated in pictures. That's not true. Mine are very, very tiny and they're very, very long. So I did want to just briefly talk about the symptoms that I've experienced. I read the long list of symptoms that you can experience. So this is just what I experienced. Upon injection, initially it just feels a little bit warm, and then the muscles in that area tighten a lot. Yesterday, second time, tightened enough that I laid down on my back. I don't know if it was because I had worked out a couple hours before, but I needed the muscles to relax. So the quickest way I know to do that without trying to stretch them is to just lay down on my back. So I did, and they relaxed and everything was fine. The other thing that I thought was interesting is, even though I don't feel like nauseous, the first day I got a couple big waves of nausea that seemingly just sort of came out of nowhere. One was when I was like demonstrating sit-ups, so that kind of made sense to me. And then one, I was just like walking around. So I'm not really sure what triggered that, but I thought it was interesting. What I find less interesting definitely is the feeling of fluid retention that I definitely do have in the abdomen, some gas, some constipation. I actually feel like I can deal with the abdominal discomfort, even though it does hurt to twist and bend and stuff. I can deal with that with heat and mild stretching. The most unpleasant part to me is something that I haven't really experienced since I was really overweight. Swelling in the calves and feet and ankles. It's not severe. It's just not pleasant. I asked the reproductive endocrinologist a couple questions in our appointment. So I am on 4 vials of the Menopur, which she said is kind of designed to bombard my system because I haven't been getting a period on my own for years and years. She said this is one approach that might work. but it might not. My body might not respond to this. So if not, then we'll give it a little bit of time. And then she said, we'll just start with like half a vial and slowly start building up, and maybe it will respond to that. And I said, how many times would you try this? Is it too early to say like how long this would take if it's going to work? And so she said, I would try it like 3 times. I've just listed 2 of them right there. And then give your body a break. And then you could try it one more time. I think that's interesting. I'm definitely committed to trying it through the end of December. We'll see beyond that. So I asked how long, I should plan to be on the shots. Like, what does that look like? She said, sometimes it's just a few days. This would probably be about 10 days, she thinks. I am going to go for an appointment on Monday. That would be day 6. They're basically going to do a pelvic ultrasound, blood work, and just kind of see how everything's going and see if they want to make any adjustments to the medication. She did say that when I had a hormone panel 5 years ago or so, at that time, if she just looked at that in isolation, she would have said that my reproductive system was aging faster than my biological age. But right now, they kind of look like they're in sync for where she would expect a 43-year-old woman to be. So I think that's interesting because, I think about how the body ages and how we all age differently. A good thing to keep in mind that not all parts of you age at the same rate at the same time. And then the other thing I thought was notable was that the only hormone that looks super out of whack for me is my testosterone. And it's surprisingly low. It's not like so low that I need to be on testosterone, but I will be really interested to see if doing this hormone therapy triggers my body to reactively raise its production of testosterone, which also happens in the ovaries for a woman. So I don't know. My husband did have a sperm analysis that is part of this process, and his sperm count is excellent. His sperm shape is a little bit different, and there is a supplement available, a multivitamin that he can take that may have some effect on normalizing the sperm shape, but it's not really seen as an obstacle. Just know that if you do have a partner, they will need to be a partner in this with you. And my husband has been incredibly supportive throughout this. All right, I think that's it. Anything else you want to add, Max? You good? Okay. All right, let's go do our shot. Maxwell J. Fluff, how are you feeling after 3 days of hormone therapy? All right, so we've had 3 days of the Menopur injections. Last night was my second time doing it on the left side. And I just decided, regardless of how I felt, I was going to lay on my back for like 20 minutes. And the other thing I did was stretch my abdominal muscles and my hips first, which I think I'm going to continue to do because I do think that helped. Those muscles like immediately start clenching up like after I do the injection. And that's part of like that immediate discomfort. Like I definitely understand about what people said about getting a little bit of burn after you do the shot. I think that feels like any injection. It's just in my abdomen, which is unusual for me. Like I'm used to that being like in the deltoid with a vaccination or something. But last night, I definitely had a lot of swelling in my abdomen, but then this morning, this is like the best it's felt. I've definitely noticed the breast tenderness today. I've noticed that my booty feels a lot more like, I just feel like a little more voluptuous, if you will. I haven't felt that way in a while. And then I went on a run this morning and my endurance felt amazing. I've honestly been kind of underslept this week, so that was somewhat surprising to me. And I started thinking about the female training advantage, which is that female bodies hormonally are actually built for endurance, which makes a lot of sense if you think about what some women go through in labor, right? Some women are in labor more than 24 hours. I feel like I'm getting a little bit of a taste of that. It felt really good. And then one of my big fears was the emotional mood swings. And I will say that I do feel like maybe I'm crying a little bit more easily. I honestly feel like my anxiety has been a lot better than it's been in the last couple weeks. So I don't know if I can thank the hormones for that or not, but just an observation that I wanted to share. Anything you want to add? You need a nap. Gonna film a workout video today, and I am feeling a little bit self-conscious that even though I feel kind of voluptuous, I do not feel like as lean, especially in the middle of my body, as I would like to filming this, but we're gonna do it anyway, right? It's part of the journey. Hi there, it's Nancy. So I wanted to catch you up on my injection journey. So Monday, I went in for an ultrasound and a blood test, and they saw that my estradiol, the indicator they're looking for as far as my hormone levels go, was not where they wanted to see it. It wasn't progressing as quickly as they thought it might. They said my uterine lining was thickening, but not that quickly. And then they're also looking at the development of my follicles, basically like the eggs maturing in the ovaries. It was all happening, but just not as quickly as they had hoped. So I went from 4 vials of the Menopur up to 6, which to my understanding is like the maximum dose. Today is Friday. So I did see the OBGYN today. They did see some growth in the eggs that are developing in the ovaries, but they're still not of the size that they're looking for. So the largest one they found today was 16 millimeters. And then they're looking at the uterine lining. When they took a look on Tuesday, that was 6 millimeters. Today it was 6.9 millimeters. So I'm going back again on Tuesday, and I'm going to be on 6 vials of medication up until that point. So something interesting for me was the effect on my workouts. Initially, being on the 4 vials, I felt was making my delayed onset muscle soreness less. However, the first day that I increased this, I felt like Samson after a haircut. I felt so much weaker, and I don't know what logical reason to give that, but I can tell you that I definitely felt it. Women have these fluctuations in their strength and in their endurance throughout their cycle. You might be really in tune with your own. This has made me markedly more exhausted. I also feel more optimistic. The combination is that I have that conversation with myself about like, I feel too tired to work out, but also, hey, maybe this will go better than you think. And it goes way better than I think as far as running goes. I feel in some ways like I could run forever. On Sunday, I could feel that my abs felt really fatigued, I think from the contraction effect that the shots cause, alongside using them to support myself in running. Heat helped. I'm not taking ibuprofen because you can't on this medication. Tylenol didn't really have any effect on the cramps. The other positive, overall, I feel more optimistic and less anxious, which is very nice. One of the interesting things that both my husband and I noticed was that I started having body odor. I can definitely stink, but this was more like I just showered and I stunk like a 16-year-old. These hormones are doing something, even if it's not helping my ovaries as quickly as we want. So I definitely feel like emotionally it's easier to cry, and it's easier to be like, oh, a puppy, oh, a baby, oh, people in love. But I don't feel that I am as easy to anger. I feel more calm in some ways. The symptoms I have experienced after taking this medication are not pleasant, but I have learned to deal with them. So initially what happens is that the side of the abdominal wall that I took the medication on tightens. And so I kind of walk like a hunched over granny over to the couch and lay down for maybe 20 minutes or so and just try to do some slow breathing, watch something relaxing, not something funny because I don't want to be laughing. After I'm laying on the couch for a little bit, I might feel some burning, but it feels very deep to me. I've also felt stabbing sensations very deeply, kind of like you have something that is going all the way through your abdomen. I know this is unpleasant as I'm describing it, but I do want to be honest. I've also noticed tingling that kind of starts in the groin area and then goes down the inner thigh into the hip and then down to the foot. And that is not wholly unpleasant. It is kind of like something that makes me not want to immediately get up and start walking. There is also the sensation of like someone pulling at your belly button from the inside, like with a string, kind of hard. I think that may be movement in the fallopian tubes from what I've learned, but I'm not sure. After the initial initial ab contractions. I feel kind of some digestive fireworks, if you will, like just things kind of rapidly moving around. And I'm sure that my abdominal wall tightening against my intestine and colon is sort of spurring that on. That's resulted in days of really loose bowel movements and then days of constipation, neither of which is a whole lot of fun, but it is kind of part of it and part of what many women experience in the menstrual cycle. The other experience that I had in upping the dosage was that the injection sites would swell, and it seems to happen after I take the next injection. The previous injection site will swell and turn red, and there's a little hard part, and this is also considered normal, but not fun. They told me that I needed to make sure that I was drinking a lot of water throughout the day. I already do. But as soon as I went up to the 6 vials, I am so thirsty. Like I could drink like a liter of water in like a half hour. Like I'm so thirsty all the time. This is taking maybe 10 minutes to do this video and I'm dry mouth the whole time. I tracked it yesterday and I think I drank 7 liters of water during the daytime hours. I did go for a long run as well, but I would say normally maybe I drink about 4 on an active day. So that was definitely a big increase for me. Nausea is also something that's come up for me. I have found that the prescription strength ginger pills that Dramamine makes work remarkably well for this, as does like herbal ginger tea. It's just random. I haven't found that it's anything in particular that makes it trigger, but just like a wave of really strong, unpleasant nausea, and then it's gone. So I think the most difficult thing for me to manage going from the 4 vials to 6 vials was the onset of like an extreme headache and brain fog, temporary memory impairment, I would almost say. It's a very strange feeling. Like I just set this down right here. This is here. I know it's here. It's going to be here when I come back. And then like, I have no idea where I put that. Like I do not like that feeling. And I greatly empathize with pregnancy brain at this point. Because I can only imagine what this feels like going on for months. Normally, I associate the end of the day and the evening with relaxation. It does make me kind of dread this little window of time. But now that I know what to expect, I think I am dreading it less and just kind of looking at it as a chore. One of the biggest drawbacks for me personally, as someone, who works with clients throughout the day, is the drive time and the appointment times for this. So I'm seeing the team that is helping me twice in a week. I need to get a blood test and then that pelvic ultrasound, and the results from that blood test and pelvic ultrasound together are what determine my dosage. Blood tests don't always come back in a timely manner. My husband very graciously drove out in the middle of the week a 3rd time this week to go pick up more meds. And this is an hour drive from us on a good day and a 2-hour drive from us on a traffic-y day. That's definitely something weighing on me that I don't want to be, disrupting everyone else just to do this. So the journey continues and I'll keep you posted with how it's going. So at my appointment on Friday, they decided that I would stay on the 6 vials of Menopur. And I was definitely a little bit nervous about it because the soreness in the injection sites themselves did seem to get like more sore over time. Like right now, I've got like 3 red blotchy areas, but it does go away. Like it does fade. Sometimes after taking the medication, it felt like a burning deep within, and those stabbing pains and urinal pains. So on Saturday, I noticed that the fogginess that I was experiencing after the shots and the headache was definitely less. And I was wondering if maybe, after a few days of being on 6 vials, my body was getting used to the medication a bit. I'm not exactly sure, but it seemed like those symptoms were less, which is obviously preferable. Another observation about this and exercise, I feel really sore and tired beforehand, before exercising. I know at this point that when I do move, I feel a whole lot better. And I'm really really glad I know that. The 1st of December, Sunday, I woke up and I was feeling a lot less sore, which was fantastic. And I actually went on a super long run and my endurance again felt amazing. It was the longest run I had done in like a year. I think that's a pretty big deal, especially since I'm feeling larger, shall I say, like my breasts are larger, my butt's larger, my legs are scraping closer together right now, like all those things that make running kind of uncomfortable. I still feel like my body is like this powerhouse. If you're familiar, with ovulation, one of the things that you look for is the vaginal discharge. So I started noticing on Sunday on the 1st that I had like that really egg whitey discharge, but like for me, like the amount maybe I would have experienced when I first got my period years ago when I was like 16 and I'm 43 now. Today is the 4th. So I had that on the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd, and I still have that today. I was kind of like, maybe this is working. Maybe my body really is. It's actually getting ready to ovulate. I also felt on Sunday that like some of like I was having trouble with like short-term memory stuff. I felt like that got a lot better. Again, I don't know if it was my body getting used to the hormones. I just felt like I was able to articulate my thoughts. I could hang on to my thoughts for a lot longer. No more of that like pregnancy brain that you hear people describe. Late in the day, I did have like a lot of abdominal cramping, but I also knew that I had done a longer run than I had done in a year. What's what? It's hard to know sometimes, isn't it? Sunday, I had eaten like a reasonable amount of food, honestly, a lot less than I might advise someone to eat on a day when they had exercised a whole bunch. But my weight was actually up on Monday and my body felt bigger. When I have like a good run, I expect my legs to be swollen, but I definitely felt like my chest was bigger and like my abdomen was differently bigger, not like the muffin top so much as like right in the area in front of my organs and uterus. And Monday I was really tight in the abs, but again, I knew working out would make me feel better and it absolutely did. So let's go to yesterday was the 3rd. I had my follow-up appointment and they found that I now have 3 mature follicles, meaning 3 eggs of reasonable size. So they basically ordered me to stop the Menopur and to take the trigger shot at 10 p.m. last night. And then tomorrow, bright and early, we're going to go for insemination. They want you to deliver the specimen at 7 a.m. and then the actual procedure is at 8:30 a.m. I'm not exactly sure why there's such a big gap in there. I will ask some questions and learn more about exactly what that whole process is like, but I'm feeling pretty excited that we got to this point. I'm still sort of in denial. Like just in 14 days of taking these injections, I feel a lot larger, a lot more curvy and womanly than I felt in years and years. I feel excited. It feels crazy. I feel optimistic, but I also feel skeptical and doubtful, kind of all rolled into one. If I do get pregnant as a result of this, I will be thrilled and I will be devastated if it results in a miscarriage, but I feel very realistic saying that it very possibly could. Looking at the statistics, no other factors considered, this apparently works for 54% of women, but not necessarily even the first time. Yesterday, when I went in, they actually seemed pretty surprised that I had 3 mature eggs and that it had worked for me this quickly. So let me share what this quickly means. I went in for 4 ultrasounds. So the day that I started Menopur was November 19th. Then I went back for a follow-up appointment on November 25th. And then I went back for a follow-up on November 29th. And then yesterday I had my last follow-up on December 3rd. And each time that I went in, they also gave me a blood test. So they're monitoring my estradiol. So let's talk about that first, because that trend is fascinating. The range for ovulatory peak is 32 to 517. So I always seem to trend around 34, 36, 32, somewhere in the 30s. So I'm not in menopausal range. So on November 19th, they measured my estradiol at 36. And so then I went on the 4 vials of Menopur a day. And then on the 25th, they measured it at 62. So it nearly doubled. That's pretty cool. So they were like, okay, so we're seeing some response, but we want to move you up to 6. So they moved me up to 6. And then on November 29th, it measured at 127. So it nearly doubled again. On December 3rd, yesterday, I was at 424. So now we're talking about like rippling. So now I am on like the upper end of ovulatory peak. I don't know if my body's ever been there in my entire life. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then in the ultrasound, they're measuring both the uterine lining and then they're looking at the follicles, the immature eggs in both ovaries. Initially, I found out that my right ovary was looking pretty and hanging out, as the endocrinologist put it. Not very active. On November 19th, before I started Menopur, in the right ovary, I had a follicle that was less than 10 millimeters. And they were looking for them to be at least 15 for maturity. And that is when the eggs would be optimal for release. And then they measured my uterine lining at 4.2 millimeters. So then I went on the 4 vials of Menopur. So on November 25th, the right ovary had a follicle that was 9 millimeters and one was 4 millimeters. And then the left ovary, they didn't really see any follicles that were worth mentioning. They said the uterine lining was 6 millimeters. So it had thickened a little bit, but not as much as they were hoping to see. So then I went on the 6 vials of Menopur. So I went back on November 29th and then they measured 2 of the right follicles, the immature eggs, around 11 millimeters. And they said the left ovary now had one showing at 12 millimeters. And they said the uterine lining was 6.5 millimeters. So it's kind of cool, just like in a few days, there can be that much growth. I wasn't pleased that we had to stay on the 6 vials of Menopur because I was really feeling the symptoms. Then I went back yesterday on the 3rd, and this is where it gets exciting. The follicles in the right ovary, they found one of them was 22. One of them was 21. 2 of them basically doubled in size in just a few days. And then they said there's another one in the left ovary that's 17 millimeters. My uterine lining is 8.3 millimeters. So this is why they decided that I'm ready for insemination, because I have 3 eggs essentially ready for fertilization, or so it looks. So taking the trigger shot is supposed to tell my body to release those eggs for ovulation. So this is where, the chance of multiple births does enter in, because if your body decides to release all 3 of those eligible eggs and they all get fertilized, you could have triplets. The likelihood of that for someone that's my age is a lot slimmer than it would be if I was like 23 instead of 43. So I took the trigger shot at 10 p.m. last night. There was no mixing. It's just the needle. Actually, I'll show you what it looks like. So this is the trigger shot. I actually had to take it home and refrigerate it. And then half hour before giving it to myself, take it out of the refrigerator. So it was all set up to go. Obviously, I've used it at this point, but it does not have a measurement on the side. I've been using 1 millimeter of sodium chloride to dissolve the Menopur powder. This felt like it was almost twice that amount. It says it's 0.5 milliliters, but it felt like a lot more fluid than the other shots. I don't exactly know why it felt like more. I have found that taking the Menopur injections slowly, like it doesn't hurt as bad as quickly, if that makes sense. So I did try to do this slowly in the abdominal wall. I rotate my sites, right? I have 6. So you start on the outside, 3 inches away from your belly button, 3 inches away from your belly button, 2 inches away, 2 inches away, 1 inch away, 1 inch away. It was the left side's turn. What I noticed was like the whole left side of my body felt this. All kinds of feelings, electric kind of tingling. I got a left-sided headache. I could feel it behind my left eye. At one point, I could feel it in my left jaw, just like sensations all throughout the left side of my body, which I found really fascinating and very different from the Menopur. And then I felt extreme exhaustion set in, which I was kind of grateful for just because I was sort of anxious going into this, not knowing how different this injection would be. So I was really grateful that I felt really fatigued. I did feel extreme tenderness in this hip, and I still kind of do, like so much so that I didn't want to sleep on it for most of the night. And that has not happened with the Menopur injections. Even though I felt sensations in my hips, it hasn't been like tender to that point. And then waking up this morning, breasts are maybe more tender than they were. And for someone who's typically flat chested, and I don't want to be like, oh, you can flick my nipple and I won't feel it, but everything here just feels so tender. So I will be really curious to see what happens tomorrow. I'm pretty excited, even though my body is pretty uncomfortable. This has been a journey, and thanks for sharing it with me. Hello. All right, so it's Friday, December 13th. It's been 1 week since the insemination procedure, and it's been about 8 days since I took any kind of injection. And I would say that my hip size is starting to return to normal. My chest still feels a little bit larger, and my breasts still feel like more tender than I'm used to them feeling. And I don't know if I've mentioned this, but my nails and hair have been growing at a wild rate throughout this. I think that's still continuing even a week off of hormones. I mean, I just dyed my hair not that long ago, and my roots are coming in, and I cut my nails at least 3 times over those 14 days. So I'm going to pick up where I left off. The insemination day was Thursday, December 5th, and it was a really long day. We got up at 4 a.m. and we were told to deliver my husband's sample by 7 a.m. It was a really chilly morning. I was told to keep the sample warm by putting it between my breasts. I didn't laugh in their face, but I kind of laughed about, because if you're a small-chested woman, as I've been most of my life, I'm also broad-chested. There's just not a whole lot of cleavage that happens naturally. On the ride there, he drove, I kind of put it between my legs. And then when we were there, put it underneath my arm. Sperm live a lot longer than I was led to believe. Our sample had to survive from about 5:30 a.m. to 7 a.m. to be delivered to them. And then my insemination procedure was not until about 8:40 a.m. In that time period, we're wondering what they did. So they washed the sperm. Basically, they put it in a centrifuge, like a washing machine type device that spins it gently, and the dead sperm and other semen material float to the top so they can take that off. And the good sperm, the live sperm, stay down the bottom. They categorize these on a scale of 1 to 4. 4 being the best. So they categorized this as a 4, saying that about 90% of the specimen was alive, and also that the number of sperm they had to work with in this sample was very, very good. The insemination procedure was actually pretty brief, and it was pretty easy on my part compared to everything else I've been through. If you're familiar with going to the gynecologist or the OBGYN, sit on the table, you put the heels up, you spread the legs, and they put it deep inside you, and then they just instruct you to put your feet on the table and stay in that position for a little bit. I'm pretty flexible, so I kind of hugged my knees in towards my chest and held in that position. They give you a 10-minute timer, and then you're free to go. Yeah, I would say that's the easiest part of everything that we've done so far. I think one of the awkward parts of this is that they instruct you to have intercourse, if you can, the night of the trigger shot, and then the day after the insemination. I mean, my body has just felt like a train wreck. We obeyed the instructions, but I have to say, I can completely see how this puts stress on a couple. I think we're doing pretty well, but I can completely see how this like takes all the romance out of trying to create a baby, all that like magical like hope feeling that you might have, feeling like pumped full of hormones, and then also feeling like you've been punched in the gut repeatedly and you just had a colonoscopy. Like you just don't feel attractive, and like you want to be intimate. The one side effect I noticed after the insemination was that I felt pretty nauseous later on. So I'm very clear that there's no way, even if I was showing early symptoms of pregnancy, that I'm even going to know, because every day I feel a little bit better than I did the day before. So my body seems to kind of be going through what I would describe as like a detox, getting back to what I felt was normal. So I tried to take my weight pretty loyally through this. The max, I had gone up about 7 pounds. I did measure my belly button waist, and that only fluctuated by like half an inch. My hips definitely got a lot bigger. There were some times when I was like, we're not getting these pants on. And they did say that your ovaries can actually start to swell. I think maybe just having a thicker uterine wall, having swollen ovaries, having everything in there be larger. I think that was a lot of the discomfort I was experiencing. So I was instructed to start taking the progesterone pills on December 8th. 3 days after the insemination, in the morning and the evening. And you're supposed to take them vaginally, like a suppository. Assuming that you are pregnant, you would continue to take them until 10 weeks of development. And this is supposed to help the fetus develop in a more healthy way. So taking the progesterone pills, which I've been doing for about 6 days now, I have noticed that they seem to make me constipated, which isn't that fun. But the other thing that I noticed was that whole uterine area, like the cervix, which I didn't even really know what that area felt like prior to this, and the pelvic floor area, the Kegels, everything just felt uncomfortable, like it was cramping all the time. So I've been using heat on a daily basis, trying to stay hydrated, trying to stay rested. The other unpleasant side effect that I noticed was that when I would stop peeing, the muscles would just want to involuntarily tighten and spasm. It was worse at night. Like if I would get up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, and 2 nights ago, it was so bad. And I was having so many muscle spasms, like in my abdomen, in my inner thighs, that I actually messaged my doctor. And I said, I know some of this is normal, but like, what level do you think is normal or concerning? Because this was disruptive to my sleep. And I feel like I've been able to tolerate most of this pretty well. So she said, that sounds unpleasant enough that we're going to have you take the progesterone orally. So I'm pretty excited about that change. I'll let you know how that goes. There's one other thing that I wanted to make sure I talk about. The Menopur, for the most part, overall, I feel like it's been like an emotional uplift and it's felt really good. In fact, my anxiety most days has felt better. However, on December 8th, I was not feeling super well. And then I just started feeling really dark emotionally. I started feeling really down on myself. I've struggled with some deep depression before, and it kind of just felt like all of a sudden I just got hit with it. It was just a day. I currently see a therapist, and I'm very glad that I have her support throughout this. But if you're someone who has never felt like that before and this medication makes you feel like that, definitely make sure you reach out and get support. No one should feel alone or feel that they have to deal with this whole emotional burden in addition to the physical burden that this brings. So the next step, I take a pregnancy test a week from tomorrow on Saturday, December 20th. They are expecting me to get a cycle if it's negative. And I haven't had a cycle since I was on birth control in May. So I'll be curious if my body kind of knows what to do if I'm not pregnant. Hello and happy holidays. Okay, so spoiler alert, I'm pregnant, but I want to pick up where I left off with this. I started taking the progesterone orally as instructed, and that got rid of that pain. not experiencing any of that now, which is so fabulous. So I did notice that coming off Menopur, my skin started to get a little drier again, and I was a little less thirsty. It seems like my hair growth had slowed down a little bit. And what I can notice now is that all of those things are starting to slowly increase. Whereas like Menopur was like, boom, all of it's happening at once. Like this is very pleasant for me. I know everybody's different. I'm probably, about 5 weeks along. So today is Christmas Eve, the 24th, and the insemination was on the 5th, and I feel like really good. I've had some serious exhaustion for sure, but it's all been pretty manageable. So I did start to notice, maybe around the 14th, 15th that, I was still getting some of those little spurts of nausea. Throughout this whole process is kind of like hard to know what is what, so initially I'm on the Menopur. I know everything is due to that. And then I took the trigger shots. And so then there were side effects from that. And now I'm taking oral progesterone. And so there are some side effects from that. And now I'm pregnant. So it's kind of like, what is what? Even though the Menopur is supposed to be kind of out of my system, the progesterone itself does seem to have some side effects. One of them for me is slight vertigo. And I don't say that to be alarming. I've worked with a lot of clients that have dealt with vertigo due to a number of different reasons. I'm not sure I'm going to do the best job explaining this, but essentially this is a side effect from the blood flow effect that the progesterone has on my body. So it's like a side effect of the side effect. So I have noticed if it's going to happen, it's going to be when I'm a bit more tired, maybe also dehydrated, and when I look down. I don't have to move my head down for it to happen, but if I look down and I look back up, it might happen. It's very slight, just like a quick reorientation that my brain's doing. When it did come up, I was a little alarmed about walking and running, and I quickly learned that, if I do what I try to normally do and kind of focus ahead of me, when you're running like a few mailboxes and I'm not just looking down all the time, I'm pretty okay. And then just reminding myself that if I do need to look down, I might feel like that. I do not feel dizzy. I don't feel any signs of like the vagal syncope that I felt in the past, which, was blood pressure related. I will say after my run on Sunday though, it was really interesting to me that I felt really good on my run. I was able to run further than I have in a couple weeks. I felt amazing. However, very quickly after that, I was like, I think I'm having a blood sugar drop. I just need to be smart about timing my nutrition, which generally speaking, I'm pretty conscious about, but it's just that much more important now. Now, I am going to say this, I'm going to continue to talk about exercise throughout this process. And obviously, this is no longer, exercise and Menopur. This is exercise and pregnancy. With pregnancy, you do not want to be starting any sort of a new program. I actually did a lot of reading this week. Essentially, you don't want to be pushing for new goals. You want to be able to maintain what you're doing for as long as you can. Now, other changes are going to happen in my body. I'm going to become a lot more flexible. I'm already flexible. So I need to make sure I'm properly warming up and cooling down so that I'm not getting injured, because that opens up that opportunity. And then obviously my body is physically going to change. I'm going to have to change the way that I work out and put stress on my abs. Right now, I can do a lot. I can do double leg lifts, but that's like one of the first things that's going to go. So I'm very conscious of that. If you're not exercising at all, this is a great time to start like a slow walking program, a gentle strength training program. It seems that estrogen has the effect of reducing my delayed onset muscle soreness, which I usually get a ton of. And I feel like my body is much more resilient in that sense right now. I also feel stronger right now than I've felt in a while. And my endurance seems like it's so much more. So even though I feel exhausted, if I start a workout, if I start, doing something, I feel like I can actually do it for a lot longer than my brain thinks I'm going to be able to. It makes sense why you would need that ability in labor, but I just found that so interesting. So we actually did 3 pregnancy tests, even though we were told to, wait until 16 days after the insemination. That would have been on a Saturday. We did one on Monday, Thursday, and Saturday. So essentially a pregnancy test tests your HCG level. And that's also the same hormone that I took for the trigger shot. So because of that, they wanted you to wait long enough for that to be out of your system before you're testing for pregnancy. That makes sense, right? So we did jump the gun. We did test a few days early. And what was really interesting, and I'll show you the picture, is that you can see that line progressively get darker. In a healthy pregnancy, this hormone level in the beginning is doubling daily. Now, it's not, working exactly like that for every single woman from what I've read, but that's why the line's getting darker. So a few days makes a really big difference. It had never occurred to me that you look more pregnant on the pregnancy test just taking it a day later. All right, so I have noticed that I am hungrier. That started maybe almost a week ago. I am eating between 50 to 100, maybe 150 calories more daily. And I'm just really trying to listen to my body. It definitely seemed to be craving more protein. I definitely seem to be craving iron-rich foods. And I did tell my doctor about that. So I will be getting my pregnancy blood test done. And I'll be interested to see what everything looks like. I am, obviously taking the pregnancy multivitamin that has iron in it as well. But I know that my iron historically has been a little on the low side sometimes. So I'm not actually packing on pounds, which is fabulous. And in fact, for me, I look like on the leaner side. I still have a gap between my thighs. So I definitely can tell that my waistband is getting tighter. It feels like there's just not enough room for everything to fit in me, if that makes sense. I'm not as squishy in the center. Apart from that, I actually feel pretty good at this stage. I know that's going to change, which is exactly why I want to record this. So I was told after I took the pregnancy test to call my OBGYN, who I absolutely love. I talked to one of her office staff this morning, was nice enough to call me on Christmas Eve day. And so I'm going to do a viability scan 7 weeks from December 5th from the insemination process. And then they'll order blood tests from there. And then I'll do the normal 10-week ultrasound appointment with my OBGYN. But yeah, in the meantime, feeling pretty fantastic. I'm 43. I've had a lot of time to feel fearful about this. And overall, I feel extremely excited and grateful to have this opportunity. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I hope something in this video helps you on yours. If you are looking for workouts or healthy recipes or other healthy lifestyle help, please check out the rest of my YouTube channel. And if you do need some help putting together your exercise plan and nutrition program, please reach out to me in the link in the description. In the meantime, I look forward to continuing this journey with you, and I'll see you in the next video. Oh, now, brown, saddle.